Greetings, everybody. We are going to start our review of the fourth canto. So, everything that we've covered for the past couple of months, maybe even like a year. So, let's take a look at what it looks like. It's probably going to be the opening page. I'm probably just going to call it the fourth canto because it sounds kind of cool. And also, many of the people who would search for this book would probably search for it under that term. Anyway, I'm thinking of using that as the title, the fourth canto. And then you see it says contain... I'm not moving. 1 second. And then you see it says containing life lessons from the family tree of Manu and Shatarupa. Story of Shiva and Sati, Dhruva the boy king, Prithu the earth's first husband, Shiva's song, Tale of the Citizen, and the Unified Brothers. Those are the working titles for the various sections that are in the fourth canto. And just looking at this, 1 second, you probably have a weird sound. Just looking at this, I took care of that echo there. There's 2 microphones now. You can get a good overview. So, welcome to the update of Mac OS 10. I had to update the streaming software, and hence a lot of things are a little bit buggy right now. Anyway, you see, this gives you a good overview of what's in the fourth canto. And actually, you see this the thing up at the top where it says the family tree of Manu and Shatarupa. That's the backbone or the spine for the whole canto. I don't know why it's called canto, but I probably want to look up what the word canto means. I think a canto is a part of a song. So in that way, the parts of the Bhagavatam might be called the cantos. So this whole part, the whole fourth canto, the backbone for the whole thing is a genealogy. If you are familiar with the idea that the Mahapuranas have 10 subjects. One of them is Manvantara, which is also known as Vamsha, which means genealogies. Genealogies from Manu, where Manu is the forefather. So this is that. This is a genealogy from Manu. And the whole fourth canto is, now what's the point of doing a genealogy if it's that the people in this family are freaking awesome? And their lives explain very important things that the Purana wants to explain. That's the point of having a genealogy. So you get, the first chapter is just a really direct family tree. Then when it gets to the 13th daughter of Daksha and Prasuti is the daughter of Satarupa, and then her daughter is Sati, and she didn't have any kids, so the family tree stops. That branch of the family tree stops there. So Vidura, who's hearing this, is going to say, why didn't she have any kids? What happened with this marriage? And then you get the story of Shiva and Sati. Shiva is her husband. Then after that story is told, when they started telling the family tree, they said, they said Shatarupa had 5 kids. 3 girls, 2 boys. First 3 girls, then 2 boys. We're going to tell you about the girls. That's what they tell you about first. And then they said the 2 boys, Uttanapad and somebody else, they came later. And we'll tell you about them later. So after the end of the Shiva Sati story, they go back and they tell you about Shatarupa's boys. And Uttanapad, her boy, has another child named Dhruva. And so you hear the story about Dhruva. I probably will think of a better name than the boy king, but it's something like that. Remember that story of Dhruva was the second child, or the child of the second wife, stepchild, you might say, and he rightly felt discriminated against, unloved, and he wanted to get revenge for that. And that wound up turning into a spiritual odyssey for him. That's that story. And how we get from there to Prithu is something I have to remind myself of as well. But I believe you go back to the family tree with the other boy, and then it comes down through Anga to Vena, King Vena, who has no children and is a bad guy. And then Prithu is cloned from his leg and repairs the damage done. Then you have somehow also connected to this family tree Barishat. And Barishat's sons, the Prachetas. And those are the three stories that finish up the fourth canto. So really the family tree of Manu and Shatarupa is the backbone on which the rest of the stories in the fourth canto are hung or organized. They're organized around that. So for now, let's look and see the first section. The first section here would be life lessons from the family tree of Manu Shatarupa. Excuse me. This is just chapter 1. And you remember we made this into a booklet. This is going to be an updated version of that booklet. It's not going to be exactly the same. So here's the first group, Shatarupa and Manu. Manu is called the thinker. That's the characteristic of humans. Manu is described as the first human. Brahma created Manu and Shatarupa as a way to get self-creating human beings. And when he figured that out, he felt that he accomplished a big deal, because then the rest of the population and so forth could go on through them. Anyway, that's Manu and Shatarupa. Shatarupa is an interesting name because it means she has 100 forms. And that's going to be required if you are populating the universe because of the way genetics work. So anyway, they have these three daughters, Akuti, Devahuti, Prasuti. Akuti means the inspirer, Devahuti the invoker of divinity, and Prasuti the procreator. So he says these three daughters married Brahma's children, the other guys that Brahma had created, and generated the root of the world's population. Prasuti's marriage to Daksha was especially prolific. So that is her name, actually, isn't it? Prasuti means the childbearer, the procreator. So she's especially prolific. The other two also make important children that make lots and lots of other kids who are important. Shatarupa also gave Manu two powerful sons, Priyavrata. That's interesting. Priyavrata and Uttanapada. Their children and grandchildren were also important during their eras. So the children and grandchildren of Priyavrata and Uttanapada, for example, Dhruva. But first, let's discuss the daughters. Let's discuss the daughters first, beginning with the children of Shatarupa's daughter, Akuti. Is that understandable? Their children and grandchildren were also important during their eras, but let's discuss the daughters first, beginning with the children of Shatarupa's daughter, Akuti. That makes sense. So now here you can see Akuti, man, you have a lot of kids. So at first glance, this is just a family. Who cares? But actually, the way that they name the kids is in itself a lesson. That's why it's called life lessons from a family tree. And also these people are named this way because of their personality traits, and so this is what happens when you combine people with those personality traits. So the first daughter, the oldest daughter, Akuti. Akuti means to inspire or arouse. And Ruchi means desire. So you can take it like that, arousal and desire, or inspiration and desire. Inspiration and appreciation, like when you appreciate something, kind of in the sense of wanting it, it's ruchi. So here's the story of Akuti and Ruchi. With his wife's approval, Manu allowed his daughter Akuti to marry the sage Ruchi. So this also tells you about the actual way that marriages were originally done. First of all, the direction of the marriage came from Akuti. She's the one who said, I want to marry Ruchi. It didn't come from her parents. So go back to all your Indian parents and tell them to go check out the marriage of Akuti and Ruchi, and then tell you what's traditional, if they're telling you they want you to marry some particular person. Akuti initiates the thing. She wants to marry Ruchi. Manu is going to be, the dad is going to be the one who blesses it or doesn't bless it. But even if he doesn't bless it, it might happen anyway, as you see with Sati. The dad will bless it or not, but he will defer to the wife to inform him whether he should bless it or not. So basically he's just being the man, so he's the decision maker, but the information for his decision comes from his wife. So that's how it used to work. With his wife's approval, Manu allowed his daughter, Akuti, to marry the sage Ruchi, a blessed progenitor with great spiritual realization and exalted meditations, but only on the condition that Manu and Shatarupa would raise the couple's boy as their own. So he said, okay, you can marry Ruchi, but the boy that you have will become our child, we'll raise him. He'll come live with us in our house. The other kids that you have, you of course raise them as normal. Ruchi and Akuti gave birth to twins, and they named the boy Yagya and the girl Dakshina. So now I'm adding this little section in, this kind of call-out thing here. Desires and inspirations give rise to expense and effort. This is the lesson of Akuti plus Ruchi equals Dakshina and Yagya. Dakshina means expense, and Yagya means effort. Dakshina also means expertise. And Yagya also means excellent effort. So there's many facets to this lesson. If you are aroused, Akuti, and thirsty for something, Ruchi, then you get ready for a lot of sweat. You're going to have a lot of dakshina. You're going to have to pay money. You're going to have to pay time. You're going to have to pay effort to get the thing that you want. So dakshina and yagya are required if you have Akuti and Ruchi. And also, Akuti and Ruchi lead to dakshina and yagya. They make you have expenses, but also they give you expertise. They impel you to action. The action or the yagya is impelled by the Akuti and the Ruchi. And it succeeds through the dakshina, or the excellence, or the actual money or resource that you put into the thing. Get it? So this is what it means, Akuti plus Ruchi. Akuti and Ruchi, they had two kids, Dakshina and Yagya. That's what that actually means. The boy was Vishnu himself, and the girl was an expansion of goddess Bu, Vishnu's consort. So that's interesting. Vishnu and Bu, they manifested, they're romantic, Vishnu and Lakshmi, but they manifested as twins. There's not many people around at this point in the universe. There's not that many opportunities to have a birth. They manifested as twins. But romantic love doesn't flourish amongst siblings. That's why Manu said, we want to raise the child separately, so they don't have a sense that they're brother and sister. We want to raise them in separate households, and they won't even know each other. Manu was delighted to raise the extremely brilliant boy in his own home. Ruchi was delighted to raise the girl. After being raised separately, their eternal, unstoppable love brought them together in marriage. Yagya and Dakshina joyfully produced 12 children, known as the children of delight. So now these are the grandchildren of Akuti. They named the children to illustrate the 12 results of expending efforts to fulfill desires. So, Akuti plus Ruchi makes Dakshina and Yagya. Now Dakshina and Yagya are going to make 12 kids. So that means inspiration or arousal and taste, thirst, inspiration, arousal and thirst, desire and inspiration makes you expend a lot of effort. When you expend, to fulfill the desires, when you expend a lot of effort, what kind of children are born? The first one is tosh, satisfaction. Then pratosh, longer satisfaction, better satisfaction. And then santosh, complete satisfaction. And santosh means contentment, the satisfaction that is so complete that you don't need any more. Fulfillment is santosh. Bhadra is the state that happens when you're content. Bhadra literally means auspiciousness, but what does auspiciousness mean? Auspiciousness means having no wants. Wants are different than desires. This is what people will get hung up on. But this so-and-so philosophy says that desires are the root of evil. Wants are the root of evil. Wants are the root of suffering. Wants are the root of klesha. Desires are not. Desires and wants are different. A desire is something that you want, but a want is something that you need. Put it that way. So Bhadra arises from contentment. Auspiciousness arises from contentment, which is the state of being untroubled by any selfish needs. So that's the fourth child. The fifth child is called Shanti, peace. Auspicious contentment leads to peace. Then Idaspati, peace leads to inspiration free from selfish thirsts. So Idaspati is refreshment. When you are santosh, satisfied, then you feel auspicious, Bhadra. When you're auspicious, then you feel peaceful. When you don't have any wants, you feel peaceful. When you feel peaceful, then you get desires that are not wants. Then that's what Idaspati means. You feel refreshment. It means you regain your vigor and your interest. But it's not the same way that it started. The same way that the whole thing started was from desire. I want this. I'm sorry, I'm not being so clinical with the language. So peace leads to inspiration that's free from selfish thirst. And then you get idma, which is elevation. Non-selfish inspiration elevates behavior. The desires, akuti, the child is yagya, effort, right? Desire makes effort. But when your desire is idaspati, auspicious, Bhadra, it's not selfish, then your yagya will be idma, elevated yagya. Non-selfish inspiration elevates our behavior. And then the next child is kavi, expertise. Elevated behavior allows us to develop true expertise in fulfilling desire. It's actually by learning how to fulfill desires of others that you learn how to fulfill your own desires. Vibhu comes next. Expertise in fulfilling desire leads to mastery of desire. And then Swana, the 10th child. Mastery of desires leads to mastery of the self. Mastery of desires leads to mastery of the self? Then I guess there's a connection between the self and desires. The self is the generator of the desire. What's the self? The consciousness, the observer. What's the desire? The thing which you want to observe or experience. So mastering the drive to experience makes you a master of the experiencer. It means you're the master of the self, Swana. Sudeva, mastery of the self, reveals its inherent divinity. And then Rochana, which is the ultimate end of Ruchi. The grandfather was Ruchi, and the final grandchild is Rochana. The experience of divinity in the self, Sudeva, is the most thrilling, luminous delight. So that's what is illustrated by this whole family tree. These 12 grandkids. During Swayambhuva Manu's reign, these 12 children of delight filled the posts of the 12 primary gods. Marichi and others filled the posts of the 7 sages, and Yagya took the post of the god's Lord Indra. So this is because these guys are very early in the cycle of the universal evolution, and there aren't other gods manifested yet. So these kids took those positions. They became the 12 Adityas, even though they're not actually Aditi's kids. Any questions? Next. So that's one little branch of the tree. Then he's going to move to Devahuti. So remember up here it's Akuti. That's it. So that's Akuti's whole branch. Then the next branch is for Devahuti. Alf notes Devahuti. In the 3rd canto, we heard the story of Kapila, the son of Devahuti and Kardama. So we already heard about, actually what the text says is we pretty much heard the most important thing about Devahuti, because Kapila is their most important child. But now let's hear the rest. In the third canto, we heard the story of Kapila, the son of Devahuti and Kardama. Now let's discuss their 9 daughters and the grandchildren they had through them. Remember, Kapila was the 10th child, and we heard all about Kapila, but what about the first 9 daughters? Didn't hear anything. Now let's hear it. These daughters significantly contributed to populating the world. Carefully hearing about them removes wickedness and grants transcendence. Why would hearing about somebody's family tree remove wickedness and grant transcendence? Because if you understand the naming, then you learn lessons about what leads to what and what comes from what. The 9 daughters of Devahuti are Kala, refinement; Anasuya, love; Shraddha, trust; Havirbu, sacred ground; Gati, progress; Kriya, action; Arundhati, enthusiasm; Shanti, peace; and Kyati, fame. So she had a lot more daughters. She had a lot more children than Akuti, and still less than Prasuti. So we'll hear about each one of those in order. Her daughter, Devahuti's daughter Kala, married Marichi, the famous sage, Brahma's child. Kala, the refiner, married Marichi, the light ray, and had 2 children, a boy named Kashyapa, sunlight, and a girl named Purnima, moonlight. And so the meaning of all this naming is sunlight and moonlight reveal the movement and details of light. Kala and Marichi equals Kashyapa and Purnima. So Kala, you guys know Ernst Willem, astrology software is named Kala. Not quite Kala, but it's related to the same root, isn't it? Same root word. And you know that means what? Time, fate, destiny. It's compound meaning. The word time, because time is the agency of fate. So time is a thing which causes things to evolve. Kala means evolvedness or refinement. Kala means refinement and connotates something changing and evolving with the passing of time. The phases of the moon, which are called Purnima, Purnima being the primary phase, which means literally the full moon, and the zodiacal positions of the sun, Kashyapa, allow us to comprehend the passage of time, Kala, and thus the evolution of fate, via the distinctions, Kala, of light. So the sun's position in the zodiac is known by the Kala of Marichi, the combination of Kala and Marichi. The light has moved to a particular position. Then you know where the sun is in the zodiac, hence you know fate. The moon is moved to a particular position. The moon is moved with its Kala to a particular phase, and hence you know something about what time it is, what's going on, what fate is unfolding. So the marriage of Kala and Marichi is really the origin of the system of astrology. People always say, Ganesh, Ganesh, Ganesh. Of course, pranam to Ganesh. But the actual root, devas, for the system of astrology is Kala and Marichi. Kashyapa had too many children to discuss right now, so they're going to ignore Kashyapa's children. Kashyapa is like another type of Daksha, who has tons and tons and tons of children. You will hear about them in the Purana elsewhere. Purnima, you heard about him a bit in the third canto if you remember the story of the first demon who had a huge epic battle with the boar, Vishnu's incarnation as a pig. Anyway, Kashyapa has too many children to discuss right now. Purnima had 2 sons and a daughter. The 2 sons are Viraja and Vishvaga, and the daughter is Devakulya. Viraja means the illuminator. Illumination is the primary quality of light. So if you Kala and Marichi, they make Purnima, then you're going to get Viraja, which is illumination. And light also has Vishvaga. It means it goes everywhere very fast. It's the fastest thing. Devakulya, you actually can't say that light is the fastest thing because there's something faster than light. But there's nothing physical faster than light. The only thing which is the only things which can be faster than light are things which are not located in space. Anything which is located in space can't be faster than light. That's why light is described as Vishvaga. Devahuti, the divine river, the celestial Ganges who washes Hari's feet. So here's that tree, what it looks like. Water is also a result of the refinement of light. The sun, for example, evaporates water into the atmosphere and then, through precipitation, generates rivers. Thus it is fitting that a river would be the granddaughter of light. Another interesting point is that light illuminates everywhere, but also produces things like water and shadow, which do not seem to have direct resemblance to light. This will be an important philosophical analogy that Narada will explain much later in the fourth canto, and since we just finished the fourth canto, you should probably have that analogy fresh in your memory. The next daughter is Anasuya and Atri. This is the marriage of love and transcendence, so to get transcendental love or divine love. Anasuya is based on the word suya, which means to delight something. Asuya means to not delight, and that's the word for hatred. And Anasuya means to never not delight, which is the word for love. So, and Atri means beyond the three. Tri means three. Atri means beyond three, nor non-trine, non-three, non-triplicate. It just means beyond the gunas, so it means transcendence. Anasuya married Atri and gave birth to three very famous sons: Datta, an expansion of the Supersoul Vishnu; Durvasa, an expansion of the Master Shiva; Soma, an expansion of Brahma. So here what you see is the three divinities are manifested from the marriage of Anasuya and Atri. When love becomes transcendence, then you can experience divinity. Divine love or bhakti is the way to manifest divinity. Datta means to give. This is the fundamental quality of love. It is generous in giving. Durvasa is very interesting. It indicates a thing that leaves home. Dur means to go far away, and Vasa is the house. And takes up residence far away, Durvasa. Love originates in the lover, but flees from the lover to reside in the beloved. It must not remain selfishly fixed upon its origin, and it must not remain unexpressed and unacted on. So the quality of love, first of all, is this datta. The second quality is this durvasa. It doesn't stay where it comes from. It has to move out. If you try to make love stay where it comes from, it will die. Soma indicates a substance hidden within things which can be extracted and pressed out. Love takes residence within the heart, but must be willfully extracted and expressed in a form that can be offered to the beloved. Soma is the thing which is offered to the gods, right? So love is actually the thing that we offer. That's the only thing that we have to offer. Another fascinating point is that Durvasa implies something fierce and hard. Durvasa is masculine. It leaves home. It's not domestic. It's wild. So that's one aspect of love. It's wild, non-domestic, fierce, and hard. The other aspect of it is Soma. It's gentle, it's soft, it's domestic. The love has the two sides that work together, which are also like masculine and feminine principles. This illustrates that love manifests in both hard and soft ways. It generates softness towards the beloved and hardness towards anything ancillary. It generates tender experiences and fierce ones as well. It generates tears and laughter. So that's the marriage of Anasuya and Atri, but Vidura breaks in here and says, why did the three foremost gods, the causes of existence, beginnings, and endings, desire to be born in non-trine Atri's family? Tell me more about this. This is interesting. The three, Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, became this guy's kids. Tell me more about that. So Maitreya is going to explain why. So we get a little story interjected here. Brahma had impelled the expansively learned Atri to create offspring. Do you think I should include the word had? So it doesn't seem like it's happening right now. Brahma had impelled the expansively learned Atri to create offspring, so Atri married and practiced his disciplines with his wife on the great bold mountain named Riksha, in a grove of ashok trees and palasha bushes laden with flowers amidst the resounding waters of the river Navindya. The scholar disciplined his thoughts by controlling his breathing for 100 years, standing on one leg without duality, eating nothing but air, and thinking, I take shelter of the master of everything. May he grant me children who are equal to himself. His disciplined breathing seemed to ignite all the three worlds as fuel, and the resulting fire of mental satisfaction flowed from his head. It became a topic of fame amongst the celestial nymphs, sages, musicians, dragons, masters, and experts, many of whom came to Atri's ashram out of curiosity. That would be an interesting thing to see, wouldn't it? The three masters noticed all this and also came. Standing on one leg, Atri became aware that the three masters had made an extremely rare simultaneous appearance. So he arose from his meditation and opened his eyes. When he saw the three leaders of the wise divinity seated on their steeds, one on a bull, another on a swan, and the third on an eagle, each with their own trademark characteristics, recognizing them, he offered respect by folding his hands as a gesture of worship and bowing to the ground fully like a rod. They gazed upon him. Should I say rod or stick? We'll say rod at this point. They gazed upon him compassionately with smiling faces expressing deep satisfaction. Their brilliance was so dazzling that the scholar had to close his eyes. That's interesting. He fixed his concentration upon them, folded his hands, and began to glorify them with a sweet voice, for they are worshipped by everyone. He said, to cyclically bring forth, maintain, and return the universe to the raw qualities of Maya, you distinguish yourself in these three forms: wise Brahma, all-pervading Vishnu, and Shiva, the mountain lord. I bow to you three who have come in response to my pleas, but I did not call to three persons for the sake of my future children. I call to the one, all-attractive and blessed being, who has many valuable potencies. So why have three of you come here from your places beyond the thoughts of the embodied? Please favor me by explaining and relieving me of this great confusion. Hearing this, the three leaders of the wise divinities happily replied to the sage with gentle voices. Whatever you decide to do cannot be thwarted, learned one. They said, your ambitions are true and fulfilled. We three are certainly the one divinity you meditate upon. Dear, our fragments will become famous throughout the world as your three children, making you famous as well. Good fortune unto you. After granting the fulfillment of his wish, the masters of the gods were fully honored by the husband and wife, who then watched as they departed. So the footnote. This story illustrates the very important concept that the various gods are not independent divinities, but are multiple facets and aspects of the singular divinity. This is why the whole pantheism versus monotheism thing is a hoax. Something which is singular has many, many aspects to it. Any singular thing can be seen from many different angles and can manifest as many different aspects. So to have a monolithic divinity without polymorphic manifestations is rather boring, unimaginative, and stilted. Okay, any questions on that? Thank you, Alf. What would not be located in space? The mind, the feelings. Feelings can change faster than the speed of light. Thoughts, anything, intellect, anything called shukshma is not located in space. So ego, intellect, intellectual processes, the thought processes, and the emotions. Dreams. Why can you move so fast in a dream? Why can you move so fast in your imagination? Okay, we'll go on. Yes, so that's right, Alf. Now the next daughter was Shraddha. Shraddha means to trust something. And Angira means to embrace something or accept it. So we're going to have the marriage of trust and acceptance. Shraddha first bore 4 daughters who signify 4 conditions that result from trusting and accepting something. Sinivali, Kuhu, Raka, and Anumati. Sinivali means without, means basically naked, or it means without jewelry, unadorned. Kuhu means to be deceived or exploited, tricky, clever. Kuhu. Raka is thick, fat, opulent. And Anumati is agreeable. So, trust and acceptance, they have these 4 kids. Trust and acceptance can be unreciprocated, exploited, rewarded, or reciprocated. The lesson here is not to blindly trust everything. We should invest our trust and acceptance into things that will reciprocate or at least reward our allegiance and confidence. So, trust and acceptance can produce sinivali, which means nothing. You can trust in someone and you can accept someone and get nothing for it. You can get nothing for it. Or kuhu, people can exploit or deceive you by your tendency to trust and believe them. That's the second daughter, exploited trust. Or by trusting and accepting something, you can get raka. The person whom you trust and believe was great, and they reward you for that trust. Or you can get the best condition, which is anumati, the reciprocation of the trust. The person or the thing, whatever situation that you trust and believe in, also trusts and believes in you and accepts you. It's actually a bit better than reward. The other interesting thing about this is in the footnote that these 4 names, Sinivali, Kuhu, Raka, and Anumati, are also descriptions of the conditions of the moon. Sinivali is the new moon. And so when there's a new moon, it's called Sinivali because the sky is naked. It doesn't have the moon, or it doesn't have its jewelry, because the moon's not there. So Sinivali is like a new moon. That's like when you trust something, but there's no result. Kuhu is after the new moon, but before the 3rd day. You're waiting for the moon to come, but you still can't see it. And you don't know if it's ever going to come or not. You keep getting promised that it's coming. So you get led on. So that's that condition of trust and faith, where you're being led on. Then there's Raka. Raka is the name for the full moon. That's the condition where your trust and faith is rewarded. You trust and faith in something, and the results are obvious. You trusted in the aspirin and your headache went away. That's Raka. Anumati is the opposite of Kuhu. So it's the next few days after the full moon. So to understand this, you have to understand a little bit of astronomy. The reason why the moon has these phases is that it orbits a point from the sun. So the moon will conjoin with the sun and then come out to the maximum opposition and then come back in. And that's the lunar cycle, going from a new moon to a full moon back to a new moon. Anumati happens when the moon starts to return. So the symbolism there is the faith comes back. There's reciprocated faith. So there's the 3 daughters, the 3 circles here. Later in the Swarochasa period of history, Shraddha also gave Angira 2 very famous boys. Now the footnote on this is interesting. The girls came first because the mother was initially more aroused. This is the Vedic concept of how the gender is determined in a human child. Like with turtles, the gender is determined by the temperature of the egg. But in human children, the gender is determined by well, of course, the genetics is this is a particular chromosome. But that chromosome is determined by the types of chromosomes which are abundant in the fluid during conception. That's the Vedic concept. So if there's more female hormone in the conception bath, then the chromosome switches to be a female. Or if there's more male hormone in that bath or that soup, then that embryo, fertilization will be done with the male hormone. So if you're having a daughter, then the woman had more output hormonally, sexual hormones. If you have a son, then the male had more output. So that the girl came first, at least that's the way that it makes sense to me. It seems to be right to me, but whether or not you think this is accurate, this is the paradigm that the Purana is thinking in. So that the girl came first means that the mother was first, more aroused. The mother is Shraddha, which is faith. And the father is Angira, which is acceptance. This illustrates that acceptance should be aroused only after trust. Only after trust has been ascertained to be well placed. So it's only after they had Anumati. Then the father became more aroused. And they produced boys. So after the faith, Shraddha had the reciprocation of faith, symbolized by Anumati, then Angiras accepted. So the life lesson here is you should not jump into your commitments. Which is also, you can go back to your Indian parents and tell them this. They just want you to get married blind. We should not jump into our commitments. We should test our commitment. See if the trust that we invest is being reciprocated. If it's being reciprocated, then Angira can be activated. Acceptance or embrace, meaning, what do they call it? Consummating the relationship. That will produce two boys. The two boys are Uttatya and Brihaspati. Uttatya means elevation, Brihaspati means expansion. Uttatya illustrates that without trusting in someone or something, we cannot rise beyond our own personal limitations. And Brihaspati illustrates that when we rise beyond our personal limitations by trusting others wisely and patiently, let's just say wisely. Patiently could invoke the kuhu. By trusting others wisely, our comprehension of the world becomes vastly broader. And a footnote here is an interesting thing. Brihaspati is named for Jupiter, the astrological significator of well-placed faith and trust. So Jupiter signifies Shraddha and Angira in astrology. Signifies his parents. Carries the qualities of the parents. Good? Makes sense? Any questions? Third day of the new moon, space bug. That is the beautifulest day. This particular month's third day was so incredible here in Japan. Here in my house, here where I saw the moon, was unbelievable. You could see the whole entire moon. You could see the full moon in the twilight sky with just the crescent, the small crescent of it. It was the most beautiful viewing of the moon I ever had in my life. Bardo, is Anasuya and Atri union the first case of fractal branching where Trimurti principle manifests in humans? Fractal branching where Trimurti principle manifests in humans, I don't know about that. But Anasuya and Atri, no, it's not. I don't even know, actually, if it's chronological. It's very difficult to read the Bhagavatam chronologically because it's conversationally presented or subject-oriented. Like he's describing the descendants of these particular people. Now later in the book he might describe the descendants of somebody else, but I don't know who was chronologically first or second. think so. Anyway, Gum Mountain. Next, oh, that's it. That's all that I've done so far. So next week we'll carry on with Javier Bu and Pulastia. So what have we covered so far? We looked at the whole overview of the fourth canto, and then we got into the first bit, which is directly all the children and grandchildren of the daughters of Shatarupa. Here's the three primary daughters. Akuti had just a few kids. Devahuti had 9, and we haven't even gotten to Prasuti yet. And Akuti, we heard about. She just had what? Dakshina and Yagya. They just had twins. That's it. By marrying Ruchi, and then those produced 12. Akuti, Dakshina and Yagya produced 12 more grandkids. So Akuti had one daughter, and then her younger sister Devahuti had 9 daughters and 1 son. The 9 daughters, we so far covered Kala's marriage. Kala married Marichi. That's refinement of light or evolution of light, and that generates the astrological principles that by the movement of light you can tell the progress of time, and hence the unfolding of fate. And the primary indicators of it are the sun and the moon, Kashyapa and Purnima. Then we heard about Anasuya. She married Atri. So here you have love marrying transcendence or spirituality. And that leads to the gods manifesting. Then we heard about the marriage of Shraddha or trust. I think this is the most useful lesson, practical lesson for us. Shraddha marrying Angira, trust and acceptance. And how trust can be misused or rewarded or reciprocated, and that after it's reciprocated, then we should accept the thing which reciprocates. And then the 2 boys will be born from that, which will grow and expand. Utatya and Brihaspati. And that's all we heard. So we're up to Javier Bu, who's the fourth daughter. We'll cover that next week. Start that next week. Okie dokie. Alright guys, I'll see you later.